Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's Facebook Live with Alison and myself. Hi, Alison.
Hi, Rihanna.
And you would have seen that over the past few weeks or couple of weeks, we've been focusing on a theme. And the theme for this month was International Stress Awareness, because it was International Stress Awareness Week from the 4th to the 9th of November. Am I correct, Alison?
You are correct.
Yeah. And the topic today that we're going to look at is, are you your own worst critic? And the reason we chose that topic is because we don't tend to focus on ourselves. We tend to focus on other people creating the stress and then taking ownership of that. But we don't look at in terms of, what am I doing to me? And am I being the critic that's creating the stress in my life? We just thought, it's a nice topic to talk about. Look at how it's impacted ourselves. Myself, I know what I've done in the past. But I think more importantly, I'd like to share with others and then also share what I've done in terms to overcome that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I think back to 2011, when I had burnout myself, yes, I did have a lot of stress around me from work, from family being ill and different things going on. But as things started to get difficult, it was really interesting to notice how much of that stress I put on myself. Because the harder things got and the less I felt in control, the more I would beat myself up about it and the more I would criticise myself and give myself a hard time. So I'd put even more stress on myself. I mean, that's just mad. Why do we do that?
I know, and just think about it. If somebody else came to you and said, I'm doing that, you'd go, why are you doing that? Just give yourself a break. Yet we don't give ourselves that advice and take that advice ourselves.
But do you think, the average person walking around getting on with their lives, do you think they really notice about being their own worst critic? Do you think they're consciously aware of it?
Good question. And this is my personal opinion. I think sometimes people, they're not aware that they're being their own self-critic because you're so used to it and you don't even realize the pattern. And I think it's until somebody points it out to you that you start noticing it. But if you don't know about it and what you don't know about, it's not going to be a focus in your life.
Yeah.
So the moment somebody pointed it out to me, then it was like, oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize I was doing that. And then I made it a focus to listen to my inner chatter. Because if you think about it, we are sometimes alone and we have these conversations going on in our head. And do we actually listen to what those conversations are? And I think that's quite important. There are many times where I'll sit and I think, oh, am I good enough to be able to do that? Should I be doing it? Do you know this whole saying of fake it till you make it? Why should you do that? If you know your content, if you know you're good at it, you're not faking it.
It's the interesting thing though, isn't it? Because when I was doing my NLP training, one of the things that somebody said when we went through a fake it till you make it process, we did an exercise called Magic Wand, where you actually step in theory, step into somebody that models the behaviour and does what you want to do, and they do it really well because you don't feel that you have the confidence to do it yourself. And at the end of it, they said a really important thing. If you can model it, you can do it. Therefore, you have the knowledge, you have the experience.
Exactly.
Sometimes that fake it till you make it, you just need that extra little safety net, that extra little bit of confidence to convince yourself that you're good enough.
I agree with you, but then there are people that take that fake it till you make it to such an extent, believing they don't have the capabilities and beat themselves up about it, that they actually believe that they cannot do it. And for me, it comes back to that story you keep telling yourself in terms of, I can't do this. Where does that story come from?
Yeah.
And it's to go back and say, when did I start believing that? What made me believe it? And ask yourself, is it true? And was it true within that context, or did I take it outside of that context? And I've carried that all along, and now I believe I cannot do something. For me, the question was, could you do it before that happened? And in most cases, yes, I could. So it comes back to what stopped you from doing it, that you're becoming this internal critic to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. What about if you're one of these people that wants to change that inner critic, we've spoken about some techniques before, haven't we? I think the first step is awareness.
Yeah.
So if you do feel that you're not achieving what you want to achieve, and you don't believe you can do things, and it feels way past stepping out of your comfort zone. We spoke before about journaling, which I think is a really powerful tool. That one of the first things to making change, first you have to have the awareness, and then you actually have to take small steps towards changing it. And one of the things that you can do with journaling is actually make a note of, well, when did that little voice come into my head today? When somebody asked me something, or I thought I can't do that. When did that happen? What triggered me then? What was going on around me? What was my thought process? And I think with journaling, it's one of those things that the more you do it, and the more you become aware of your behaviour, then that's one of the keys to actually becoming your best cheerleader rather than your worst critic.
Exactly. And
just helping you understand how you behave so that you can actually make the changes. Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. And this is something from my personal life. So some of you might not know this, but I came to the UK 13 years ago. And I gave up a very good job. I head up a division nationally for a company. Growing up in South Africa, it was during the era of apartheid. But when I was working for this company, apartheid had fallen away by then. The company was really good to me. I started at the bottom, climbed the corporate ladder, and that's how I landed up to be in such a good position. I then decided I wanted to come to the UK and get the international experience, and I gave up the job, and everybody thought I was crazy in doing that. Coming over to the UK, no job, not even having a job offer, not even an interview. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to come and I'm going to do this. And if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, you know what, give myself 3 to 6 months and I go back to South Africa. Having the tenacity and perseverance, I got my first role within the first 2 weeks that I was here. And the rest, like they said, is history. I had to start really at the bottom again. And I worked myself up again. And that was fine with me. I didn't have an issue with that. And then 4 years ago, I decided to start the business. And sometimes you do take a step back and you're like, oh, what did I do? Do I need to go back into the corporate world? I'm not earning a monthly salary. And then the doubts start creeping in. And what I've done in situations like that is to take myself back to when I came here and the success I made out of my career when I came over with practically nothing. And remind myself I did it then, which means I can do it now again. So for me, it was going to look for those positive behaviors in terms of where I've done it before and where I was successful in doing it, and saying, why can't I do it again?
Absolutely.
What, again, were those behaviors that made me successful that I can implement now? So it comes back to what you were talking about, the modeling. if you see somebody's doing something really well, you want to model that you can do it. But I think you can almost model yourself as well, in terms of where you've done stuff really, really well and you worked out how you did it, and then just to take that and almost copy and paste.
Yeah. I have met some people in the past though that they call it imposter syndrome, where even where they go through and talk themselves through that process about, well, I've done it before, I've done this and I've done this, and they're trying to talk themselves around to being the confident, amazing person that on one level they know they are, but on another level they still feel like they're an imposter, like it isn't quite real and they don't quite deserve it. Have you come across that one before with anybody?
I think I felt like that at some times.
Okay.
You know, I sit there and I think, they're going to catch you out. They're going to catch you out. But then I've got a really good coach. And when I become irrational, because for me it's irrational, and I'm not saying this is for everyone, because each one goes through their own phases and it might not be irrational for the next person, I would then call her up and say, I need you to help me put perspective to this. And she helps me then through a structured process to put everything into perspective. And again, she will ask me questions to think back in terms of where I have done stuff, and might not be exactly the same or similar, but it'll be behaviors that I can think about and how could I apply it into the situation to break that imposter mold. And that's what I do for myself.
I think that's so important. I mean, I think we all, myself included, I think we all have imposter syndrome. It doesn't matter whether you're male, female, whatever. I think all at some point in our lives, and quite frequently, have that inner doubt, that critic, that feeling of, oh, are we capable? Are we imposter syndrome? And I think what you've touched on is really, really pertinent, because having somebody else that you can talk to help you get out of your own way and just not big you up, but remind you about what an amazing, strong, incredible person that you are is really, really powerful. And it doesn't have to be a paid coach, it can be a best friend.
Exactly.
But having that circle of people around you that you can go to help you get out of that space is really important to actually helping move yourself forwards and getting out of your own way. Because, you know, when we're being our own worst critic, I think there's that tendency to pull back and perhaps not embrace stuff or do things that we really want to do, because we're too busy telling ourselves we can't, instead of reminding ourselves that we can.
And I think it comes back to what Judith said last week. I think it comes back down to fear. And what is it that we're fearing? And for me, I think it's also, we're scared of what people will think. And how people are going to judge us.
Absolutely.
And that's when we start, I think, becoming our worst critic, because then we want to make sure all the I's is dotted, all the T's is crossed. You want to make everything so perfect that you're putting stress on yourself. And you actually thinking they're going to think it's not good enough. In the meantime, do you know what? People don't care. They're looking for certain things that you can provide to them, and that's what they're looking for. Whether you've not dotted your I's or crossed your T's is besides the point. And again, I'll give an example, and I picked it up this morning. I was thinking, oh my God. So I did a business proposal last week, and normally I scrutinize it to make sure there's no spelling mistakes, everything is correct, and I did that with this proposal as well. And normally what I do is I do it in a Word document, and then I save it into a PDF, and I'll read it through in the PDF again. It was amazing what you pick up in the PDF. I didn't see any spelling mistakes, and then the client called this morning to say, oh, the proposal has been accepted. Could we just quickly go through certain aspects? And I said, yeah, no, fine, not a problem at all. And I opened up the document and I looked at the first sentence and I was like, oh my God, there's a spelling mistake. you know what? The client didn't, they might have picked it up, but they didn't say anything about it.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it was the bottom line in terms of the way the proposal was presented. It made business sense to them.
Yep.
And that's what they accepted.
And
they
that's what's
didn't
important.
turn it down because I forgot an O in a word.
Actually, going back to what Judith did for us a couple of weeks ago, there was another point that she raised that I thought was particularly interesting and also pertinent to this topic. Do you remember that she was talking about quite often the inner critic that
Yes.
we have
Yeah.
comes from something that happened in childhood? A teacher that poked fun, or a parent that poked fun, or friends that poked fun at something. And that stays with us, and it doesn't stay with us in a conscious way.
Exactly.
But then we'll be faced with a situation that is similar enough that almost the body goes into that stress response and that fear, and then we become paralyzed and locked in that state, and then we behave in the same way that we behaved when we had the original incident. And that's really hard one. That's a really hard one, because most of the time we wouldn't necessarily be aware of that.
Exactly. And I think you only become aware of it again if people point it out to you. And I think, again, if people pointed things out to us, we shouldn't take it personally.
Yeah.
They're trying to help us. But then again, we look at things negatively, and then we're being hard on ourselves, because the message we're taking in is with a negative hat on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of just being open to the feedback that you're getting.
Yeah.
And saying, okay, I've received that feedback. What changes do I need to make?
Yep.
And for me, myself as well, I find it sometimes difficult.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh my God, now what's that person going to think about me? And that's not the intention. The intention was, the feedback was given to me with good intention.
Yeah.
And I need to take that feedback with good intention and see how I can apply it.
There was something pertinent that Simon said the other week, wasn't it? I can't remember the exact phrase. It's that there's no fault, there's only feedback, or something along those lines. I can't remember the exact phrase, but it was
exactly, it was spot on, and it's exactly what Simon said that we need to apply.
Absolutely.
To ourselves as well. And
we've had some good speakers the last few weeks, haven't we?
We have, and it just shows you the golden thread that runs through it.
Yeah.
And it comes back. We're leaders in our own life.
Yeah.
And if we are advising people, it doesn't matter if you don't have people reporting into you. You've got a peer group.
Yeah.
You've got friends. You've got your family. You've got walk the talk.
Yeah.
You've also got to show them that you're trying to make a difference the way you want them also to make a difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's always difficult. I don't think we will walk away from the aspect of not having this inner critic and being our own critic. But I think we need to learn not to be so harsh on ourselves. It comes back to, if you see somebody beating themselves up about something, you're going to say, don't take it so hard, give yourself a break. And we need to learn to give ourselves a break as well.
Yeah, it's not about silencing the critic necessarily, because I think sometimes that inner dialogue that happens helps you process things and move forwards. It's about having a balance, about when do we listen. It's like having the angel and the devil on each shoulder. When do we listen, and when do we thank our inner dialogue for raising the topic, and then just saying thank you. There was an amazing thing that Judith did, where she sort of took the 13-year-old self that was really quite fearful and saying, thank you for that information, thank you for keeping me safe, I don't need you anymore, and then moving past it. And I think that's a great way to deal with an inner critic as well. Listen and then move past it.
So Alison, a lot of food for thought on
Indeed.
this topic. I think we're both guilty of it.
Yeah.
So I think the lesson to Alison and myself is also to go and see how we can apply it.
Always.
And I think the takeaway I'd like for all of you watching as well, take a step back as well. Go and look at in terms of where are you being your own critic, and are you being fair on yourself? And what can you do differently? Even if it's just one small aspect, and even if it's changing one thing in a week and just practicing that, see what difference it's going to make in the next week. So that's my takeaway for you on our session today.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rayana.
Okay, thank you, and we'll see you next week again.
Bye.
Bye.